So, Paper Mario is one of those game series that's been in a very weird, rut as of recent, and it's not all terrible or all bad things, and in fact, I don't want to get into that conversation. But there's a commonly agreed thing in the community that Super Paper Mario is the black sheep of the entire franchise. It's weird, it's different, and it has gameplay unlike any of the other games in the entire franchise. Which is why when I played it again recently, I realized, this is pretty good. But then upon further inspection, it became clear that, hey, wait a minute, this game has some really weird design. This game likes to be funny, right? Let's make that clear. It's it likes to think it's very funny, thinks it's clever. To do that, it also tries to do some funny things with the game design. So today I'm going to tell you about some of the weird design choices in Super Paper Mario, because some of them are very weird and they're not very funny or fun or anything for that matter. Anyway, let's get started. So, Super Paper Mario is a pretty interesting game. It's a platformer with RPG elements, which I think is a good idea. See, but what am I talking about when I say funny game design things? Well, let's go over them. The first example of a weird design choice is probably in Chapter 1. See, there's this weird part where you're supposed to put in a minus code, where you're supposed to click a button on your controller to solve a puzzle. It's weird, but okay, it can pass, Sometimes you just need to do that. Whatever. Aside from that, all of Chapter 1 is actually relatively normal. It makes sense, the gameplay is introduced pretty well, you learn the mechanics of 3D swapping. Fun time. Chapter 2 is where one of the bigger ones becomes obvious. In Chapter 2-3, you become a slave and have to do forced labor because you broke a vase. It is a very weird level, and honestly, it kind of freaks me out. It was kind of bizarre. It's kind of bizarre. Not only does it not really make a lot of sense, but it was weird. Now, I don't think I hate this one either. While it may be different from the other levels so far, it isn't super long, and while there is some tedium to it, it's a fun prison escape level, where you input codes, and there's a lot of cool parts where it's basically like a bank heist, except instead of a mansion. Oh, there is a weird part that I'll bring up now because it becomes a lot more obnoxious later. They really like their codes in this game. They really like their codes. These numbers, they'll make you input so many numbers in this game, so make sure you have a notepad, because be ready, we got a lot more. Chapter 2 is also relatively normal. There is a game show, but there's a game show in every Paper Mario game, so whatever. And aside from that, it's pretty good. Chapter 3, well, this is where the levels themselves start to get a little more obnoxious, right? It's not that the game itself is bad, it's just that some of these levels are very difficult for the weirdest reasons. One of the levels is a giant tree, and man, if this song doesn't make you super top, but this tree drives me insane. Aside from that, World 3 is actually probably one of the more normal worlds, as it makes sense, and the platforming is actually pretty decent, aside from maybe the underwater level. The final dungeon's also done well. Even though there's more number codes, this one's not as long and easier to remember, but still, number codes. What is this game with number codes? Well, this is only the beginning. Chapter 4 is where I think things really took a turn for the worst. See, in Chapter 4, you go to space. Cool idea, right? yeah, it sounds pretty cool, getting to go around in space, but this means the entire game, almost every single level in this chapter, is completely different. Instead of actually building upon different things, instead of building upon the skills you've learned so far, you are instead thrust into a space shooter setting. And honestly, it's kind of tedious. The space backgrounds all look the same, and it's super easy to get lost. Personally, Chapter 4 is one of the more obnoxious areas, and even the one level where you do get to control it normally, it's one of the most obnoxious levels in the game. It's such a weird choice to make an entire world like this. And, I mean, I guess it's okay because it's only one world that has very different gameplay. Right? Chapter 5 is probably where the worst offender of the entire game comes in. Right, you know how I said they really like their codes or whatever? This one takes it too far. On one of the levels, look at this code you have to input. Why? What is the point? And there's so many. There is no reason for it to be like this. Like, this isn't fun to do. You have to, like, whose idea was it to just, like, do this? This isn't fun. And then, to add insult to injury, you have to write in please with the Wii remote keyboard. Why? Why are you like this, Paper Mario? Why? And I understand a lot of the other games kind of have stuff like this too, but this is just obnoxious. I think you write it over and over and over for no reason. Like, literally, they could have put it maybe once, or even as a dialogue box, and it would have been 100 times better. But instead they do it like this. Chapter 5 is weird, but it's alright. Aside from those, it's just a mediocre chapter. Chapter 6 is another one they completely changed the gameplay for. This one I can forgive, though. Right, in terms of story, this is done at a somewhat decent way. And while it does start out tedious, it actually does end up making a lot of sense once you end up, getting to a certain part in that world. And I didn't like it, and I still don't think it's an amazing choice of gameplay. But it works. I think it does work, even if the world is destroyed and everyone dies. I still think it does work, and yeah, I mean, it's okay. It's another weird gameplay choice. Chapter 7 is another chapter where things just get very, very tedious and very unfun. See, this actually starts out as a cool chapter. Mario goes to hell. But it slowly just becomes more and more obnoxious with things like the darkness. Like, this entire World 7 is probably, Chapter 7, World 7, is probably the worst chapter in the game, not because of bad storytelling, but because of how obnoxious it is. I'm sorry, if you're not tired by these songs once you're finished, then I don't know who you are, but you're probably insane. Right? You have to get these apples, and it's not fun. It's never fun. It's such a... And it's just not a fun world. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I hate this one. Anyway, you finally make it to Chapter 8, right? The finale, right? The end, whatever. This one's done a lot better. And while there are some parts I'm a little iffy on, it does alright. Even though the design of the game itself is a little weird. Overall, Super Paper Mario is a very bizarre game for a lot of bizarre reasons that really they shouldn't be like this. Because there's so many good parts about this, but I can't say it's my favorite Paper Mario game because of how many weird and stupid design choices they are. Like, okay, whatever. But I'm not getting into the Paper Mario discussion any more than saying this one isn't my favorite, because I have seen what they can do, and I have seen the nightmares they've caused.